Jonathan Regev is still with us here in our studio, and by Zoom we're joined by IDF Reserve Major Shadi Khalloul and Yaron Schneider, Arab Affairs reporter, Channel 12 TV here in Israel. Thank you both for joining us. Jonathan, we'll continue with you and ask you what's Israel's goals, what Israel is trying to achieve vis-a-vis Hezbollah.
Perhaps a signal to Hezbollah that they've got too much to lose if this situation continues. Of course, the main goal for Israel is to drag Hezbollah far away from the border. And if we've learned anything for the past week is that if we're speaking of 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers, that's not enough. Whatever they have to this day, and I'm speaking of even anti-tank missiles, that the range is relatively short, even that can cross the border from a range of, say, 5 kilometers or so. So you need them far away from the border. 10 miles or so. That, I think, would be the minimum that Israel wants to achieve.
Does Israel have any idea of how to achieve that?
No. Because if you want to do it by power, do it by power. Israel, I don't think for the moment is doing enough. And again, there are good reasons for that. Let's remember, we're speaking Lebanon. The main focus is still on Gaza. Is Israel willing, ready for a second front in full swing? I'm not sure. But on the other hand, you have about 60 or 70,000 Israelis currently who cannot go home, and I'm speaking only about the northern border. They cannot go home. The city of Kiryat Shmona, a city of 30,000 people, practically empty. How long can these people stay away from home? If you want them home, you need the Radwan forces not only not on the fence, but even if you have them 3 or 4 miles from the fence, that's not enough. You need them further and further away. The Americans believe they can achieve it with diplomacy. Perhaps 3 months into the war, it hasn't happened yet.
Yes. So Shadi Khalloul, good evening. Thanks for being with us. What's Hezbollah's goals? What are they trying to achieve, and how can it be balanced by Israel by Israel's goals?
Well, you have. I think Hezbollah is actually. Was ready to go to war on October 7th, or they were preparing to launch a type of incursion in our soil in the Galilee. He declared about occupying the Galilee, the plan of occupying the Galilee that was actually copied by Hamas, and they actually did it on their own timings. And that's what Hezbollah is actually trying to do. Hezbollah declared clearly and loudly that they are willing to go all the way to annihilate the Jewish Israeli state. He said that in his speech Nasrallah in 2014, and he reminded us that always, and his ambassador to Iran 2 months before the war started, October 7, he in an interview said that if the Jews will not be convinced to leave Israel peacefully, we will make that by force. But they declare this in all very loud voice, include Iran, include the prophets. What we need to do is, I don't accept any talking about 1701 and other than dragging Hezbollah away of the border. Who is Hezbollah? Let me remind everyone who's speaking about Hezbollah, including Blinken, Mr. Antony Blinken, the foreign minister of the United States. Hezbollah sitting as civilians, include Radwan force in Yaron, which is here just 4 kilometers from where I am sitting and speaking with you now. They are in civilians. Even if you reach diplomatic agreement, it means that Radwan force, who are civilian Shia Muslim radicals, sitting in front of you in Yaron in civil uniform, and below their home that they are collecting intelligence from the homes and the borders. They have a warehouse of ammunition, and they have tunnels that connecting them deeply inside Bint Jbeil and deeper to the Lebanese Shia towns. And whenever they need, they can infiltrate all the way to the border, and in one order from Iran, they can infiltrate the Galilee and do what they want, another October 7 here. So let's not talk about any diplomatic agreement. We left Lebanon, and after the war in 2006, the second Lebanese war, we left Hezbollah and we feeded Hezbollah with this agreement of 1701. They were operating in our borders. They infiltrated the borders. They went all the way to Megiddo. They dig 6 tunnels that we found them, and I'm not sure if we found everything. And they were provoking us in order to test our reaction. So let's not play the games of diplomacy anymore, because we need to decide as Israeli state, as a people of Israel, what we need for our existence. It's a survivor war. That's what I think. And we need to win this war. Otherwise, Israel, by diplomacy, will keep feeding this monster until this monster eat all of us.
So, Yaron Schneider, you've been waiting patiently. Thanks for being with us. We've heard Jonathan and we've heard Shadi. And now I ask you to sum up this big picture, because obviously Israel is threatened by Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't hide its goals, its motives to get over Israel at the end of the day. What can be achieved given the diplomacy and the war in Gaza and, the limits of both sides?
Well, Yoav, I think that the conventional wisdom, especially after October the 7th, is that we shouldn't wait any longer and see what comes next. As already explained, the threat of Hezbollah was probably underestimated, or at least not being, I would say, engaged directly in accordance to the threat to the people of the north and all of Israel, and which is much more of a threat than the one that we have from Hamas. So now we have to make a tough decision, we as Israel, but we're not alone. As you know, from the first day of this escalation, from October the 7th, we're actually backed by the United States, which positions its own military in front of Lebanon over the sea, just to give the threat over Hezbollah a sense of reality. And now we have to listen carefully to the messages that come from Washington and make our own decision. When it comes to the threat of Hezbollah over the border, as we see now in the pictures, the threat of Radwan, I think that Israel already decided. It's nothing that we have to speak up as something that should be decided. It's already has been decided that we will wait no longer. And as long as we are engaged in this conflict with Hezbollah during the 3 months, Israel actually sees every opportunity to not only to degrade, but also to target the operators, or I would say the terrorists of Radwan Force, and also its commanders, as we understood happened this week. And this is something big, which actually is unprecedented in terms of the conflict with Hezbollah.
Yeah, and furthermore,
but when it comes to,
Yaron,
when it comes to
please go on.
When it comes to the escalation, we have to see that Nasrallah is playing a tough card of being, I would say, restrained by its own rules of the game, which means that he escalates intentionally from the very beginning of the war, and it was already been described, so I won't go over it again. And he still limits the attacks on the area of the borderlands. So does Israel. Now the question is, as we are actually in some kind of a momentum of attack, a proactive opportunity to attack Hezbollah in its own land, maybe we should take opportunity to expand it and to get rid of all the threats that are still there. I don't know what is the position of the Israeli government for the moment, part of the big remarks, but I think that we are going in the direction of expansion. Although there is diplomacy, we don't know what are the chances of this diplomacy to succeed, but it's definitely going in the direction of escalation, still in the borders of southern Lebanon, and not more than that, but it can easily be dragged into something bigger.
Okay.
And I haven't even mentioned the assassination of Saleh Harouri.
Yes, so back to you, Jonathan. Yaron just spoke of escalation. Shadi spoke earlier about the necessity of Israel to eliminate, or at least to push back this threat from our borders. If Israel goes to such scale of war, how it would look like on both sides of the border? Because it would look totally different than what we've seen in Gaza.
Totally different. First, in Lebanon, sheer destruction. We're seeing what is happening in Gaza. The same thing would happen in Lebanon, only to a sovereign Lebanese state who is not really responsible for what is happening in its own state. The sovereign state of Lebanon, not really running Lebanon. It's an Iranian-backed organization really making the shots. What we have to care about is what happens in Israel. A preview, perhaps, these two attacks that we saw first on Saturday on the aerial unit in Meron, and this morning the Northern Command. As we said, Hezbollah is putting great focus at the same time on one place. 50, 60, 70 rockets, UAV missiles, you name it, all aiming at the same place, because again, you fire 50 rockets to one place, 3, 4, 5 may eventually hit.
Shadi, a high price for both sides if we go to war, but you say it's a must. It's not if, but we have to do it. Otherwise, the price later on will be much higher.
Yeah, of course, Yoav. I think we have actually cards in our hands still, and as Israelis, to play with, and very strong cards that we didn't use them until now. And if we use them, I believe strategically we will make the other side start fighting each other's, like we saw in the last 10 years in Syria, civil war. And Israel didn't use those cards yet, but I can tell you that and assure you, Hezbollah is very weak interiorly inside Lebanon. Lebanon is a failure country since 1975, since the first Lebanese civil war. It functioned until that time under Maronite leadership that was strong, and it was successful country under them. And once it was controlled by Islamic political leadership with radical groups like Hezbollah, it became a failure country and total loss. And we didn't play still the cards as we should play them. But if war starts, I know we will have a damage, but we have no choice because the imminent threat from those guys is unbearable to our national security nowadays.
Yes, Shadi, thanks for that. Yaron Schneider, last words from you. What should we look for in the next coming days, weeks?
First of all, let's see what the American envoy, Amos Hochstein, can bring in terms of diplomatic solution. I don't put much hope on this regard, but we have to wait and see. Maybe Hezbollah, at least tactically, for its own survival, will be ready to withdraw much extensively from the borderline, and by that, at least now, for now, to reduce the tension along the border. But in the long run, we should change our, I would say, outlook about the threat over the border. We cannot afford another October 7th in the north, and this needs to be operated, this needs to be translated into a much more assertive policy.
Yes, Yaron Schneider, Shadi Khalloul, thank you so much.